Welcome everybody to Live on Wednesdays. Today we are talking about grief and sadness. Does it go deeper than just the emotional level? Okay? So the traditional Chinese medicine looks at things a little bit deeper. They're not just looking at a symptom and looking for a way to alleviate that symptom. They try to look for the source of it. And many times emotions can have a really deeper effect on our body, on our person. So it's interesting that when I was in my 30s, so we're talking like 30 years ago, I would get chest congestion, like a bronchitis, every single month. And I've always struggled with sluggish southern hemisphere plumbing, if you know what I mean. But I did not understand that the two of those could be connected. And maybe you don't either. And so being in this group where there is a big focus on gut health, because gut health is connected to so many autoimmune disorders, that is very, very important to also see what the underlying cause could be. Now, there could be a physical cause, there could be an emotional or internal cause, or there could be a combination of the two from a traditional Chinese medicine standpoint, or TCM. So, as an example, perhaps you may have experienced the passing of a cherished friend or family member. And ever since then, perhaps you've had a cold that you just won't go away, or you can't get rid of, or maybe that has transitioned into something more serious like bronchitis or other chest congestion, or maybe there's been an asthma flare or an allergy flare. All of these things could have been triggered or connected to that grief event. So, and it's really important to understand this, because grief and sadness from a traditional Chinese medicine viewpoint is connected to the lungs. And the lungs are so important for taking in the air, taking in oxygen, circulating that throughout our body and to our brain. And this is vital for our survival. It's vital for life to have this process function well. So that the lungs then control that flow of energy in our bodies. And so when we do not process grief and sadness properly, when you don't let it go, when you can't let it go, then it can cause that energy deficiency in the lung, which then of course is going to affect the lung function and the oxygen circulation, which then of course is going to cause debilitating issues with other parts of our body, because our whole body depends on oxygenation. And it's interesting because it's not to say that we shouldn't have grief. I mean, it's a natural part of life at this point. None of us are immune to emotions, including anger or worriness or fear. But the unfortunate thing is that our culture and our society teaches us that those are negative emotions or bad emotions or emotions that need to be toned down and ignored. You know, how many times would somebody come up to you or to me and say, oh, how are you doing today? And maybe it's been after a grief event, or maybe we're just not having a great day, but what do we say? Oh, I'm fine. I'm okay. I'm doing okay. Because we push it down, and we think if we push it down and on the outside we're doing fine, everything is hunky-dory. Well, when that happens and it continues for any length of time, then those are suppressed for a length of time, then it can have a damaging effect on that corresponding organ. And in this case, with grief and sadness, it is the lungs right here. It's the lungs. And it just happens that grief is the worst emotion to transition through. Grief has several stages that you need to go through to properly process it. And if you don't reach all of those stages, then you're still holding it in. You're not completely letting it go. It requires time. It requires a slower pace to be able to process all that. So, what are some causes of grief? What are some things that can happen? And it usually occurs when there are major disruptive things, changes in our lives. And I spoke about one, like the loss of life, whether it be a cherished family member or a friend. It could be loss of a job, loss of property. It could be maybe a move, a major move from one location to another. It could be a relationship breakup. And by the way, a death can also be a pet, because pets are family members, right? It could be a breakup in a relationship. It could be just dealing with the hardships of everyday life. So when this happens, how could it be manifested? How might our body manifest this? And everybody's different, so you're going to manifest it differently, because everybody has their own different areas of weakness. But maybe you're having a hard time taking a breath, or a deep breath. Maybe you are feeling like you have a weight on your chest. Because remember, grief and sadness are connected, correlate with the lungs. Maybe you have an asthma flare-up or an allergy flare-up. Perhaps you catch colds easier or hang on to them. Can't get rid of them. Maybe there's excessive sweating, night sweats or hot flashes. Because with the lungs, pores tend to open up. And if they're opening up too much or not enough, then we have the consequences of that. So, I mentioned in the beginning about how the southern hemisphere plumbing can be connected to the lungs. So how can that be? How can the colon or large intestine be connected to all of this? Every organ in Chinese medicine has a partner. The lungs partner is the colon or large intestine. So when grief is not properly addressed, or goes unresolved, it then becomes chronic, and then there is the inability to let go. the plumbing or bowels become stuck. Literally, they can't let go. So think about it, any of you parents, if you've ever had a small child that has caught a cold, and as it progressed on, it settled into the chest. How many times has constipation then become an issue along with that? There is that inability to let go. Now, I'm not saying everything is connected this way all the time. This is where getting a good background, or knowing what your background is, looking back, thinking about things. I mean, it might not even be a recent event. It can be way back, and it has just built up to now. Maybe you're just now manifesting the symptoms of it. But this is why, if I ever have a consultation with someone, or if I first meet you, I might be asking you questions, because getting to know you is helpful to be able to drill down what might be the reason behind things. So there could be a physical reason for it. There absolutely could be. There could be an emotional reason for it. Could be a combination of the two. But until the time comes when you have figured that out, and then you work on releasing it, letting that go, that is when you should start to see improvement in your health journey, in your healing. If it's left unresolved, issues from the past can resurface and prevent you from enjoying your life to the fullest. Now, it's always true. We can't always control the external triggers in our life. However, we can learn how to manage the things that we cannot control. In other words, we can manage how we allow them to affect us. And there are ways to do that. And if you want to know how to do that, just, send me a message and let me know. But there's definitely a connection between emotions like grief and sadness, and different areas and organs in our body. Grief and sadness are connected to our lungs and its partner, the colon or large intestine. So if you're having problems in that area, really dig deep, try to figure out what it could be, try to drill it down, and then we need to go forward and work on how to help release that. And there's several different ways to do that. So that is our discussion for today. Now, go be awesome.